Greetings, friends. This is a video about how to hide mistakes in your bullet journal or planner or moleskin or notebook or thing you want to hide mistakes in that has off-white paper. So, a lot of times I write in my bullet journal and I'm messy and hectic and it reflects the mood of the day, and it's fine. It's a big mess. I use 10 different color pens, whatever is on hand, and I look back maybe with planner nostalgia later and realize that's how it was. That was that day. It was, frenetic. So that's cool. Some days though, I try to be a little tidier in my bullet journal. I maybe am thinking and planning and, trying to do some deep self-reflection all at once. And it really helps to draw some straight lines, make some nice charts, make some pretty check boxes. And on those days, it gets really annoying when I make a silly mistake. So I've been brainstorming about ways to correct mistakes in my moleskin, and this is just it's a soft-sided standard size moleskin with a dot grid. And, these techniques would work in a Leuchtturm or whatever notebook you're using. It would actually be easier if the paper wasn't off-white, but I've been trying to find ways to camouflage mistakes on off-white. So first, I did a little research on the internet, and I found a lot of things that seemed kind of unlikely to work, but I thought I'd try them anyway in the spirit of a sort of Mythbusters style science experiment. And some of these things were vodka, acetone or nail polish remover. It's not always acetone anymore. Sometimes it's ethyl acetate, which is probably pretty chemically similar. Baking soda and water, which sure cleans most things. Lemon juice. Yeah. And the thing with all of those is that they're liquids, and liquid plus ink plus paper are generally a really bad idea. So I did use them very sparingly on little Q-tips, and I tried to sort of dry them off and make it as unliquidy yet, still chemically valid as possible, and then sort of rub a little. And generally it made just a big mess. So here's an example of vodka. It just smeared all over the place, and it went through to this page and it went through to that page. So I'm going to call it a failure. That didn't help at all. And the same thing pretty much happened with all the other liquids like lemon juice and baking soda and paste and all that. I also tried using regular whiteout, specifically this one, Presto Jumbo Correction Pen with a fine point, that was recommended to me by a very nice lady at the art supply store as being the best whiteout. And I knew it wouldn't match, which it didn't. So I tried then coloring the whiteout with various colored pencils, and billions of different shades and mixes of ochre and burnt sienna and yellow, and it just looked like a big mess of colored pencil and whiteout. So this might be nice, but it's not really good camouflage for your moleskin. So here are some things that I like for corrections so far. So I set up a little page with a few common pens that people might use, and I'll show you a few of these techniques on here, but not the first one, so bear with me. So here is one of these habit tracker guys I made for June, and please don't judge me for my lack of morning meditation. I swear I did it in May, and I will again. I will. But when I was drawing this, I counted out all the little dots and I marked them with a pencil, and I was all ready to make my nice chart. But somehow when I was inking it in, I realized I miscounted and I drew this line here, which I don't want. And it makes me sad because I'm looking at this every day in June and here's this stupid line. So my first technique is called the skin graft. And what I do is either take a old moleskin journal that has some extra pages in it, or maybe dedicate a page at the back, like either cut it out or just, call it a skin graft donor page. Or like in this one, there's some stuff in the front that's like really messy and, whatever. And I found this page that is blank that I don't even know why, and it's just it has a thumbprint on it. It's I'm not going to frame this and look back with nostalgia on at the weekend I didn't do the dishes or the laundry. So anyway, I figured this is a good donor page for my graft. And so what I do is I look at this and see how big it is, and I can even look at my veins. I can even measure it. We got, what's these millimeters? I've got about 9 millimeters, and the width of a pen stroke, a millimeter, whatever. And so I'm just gonna cut that little sliver out of this extra page, and I could open it up on my self-healing mat here and do it that way, or just take like this little piece of cardboard and slip it in so I don't cut a lot of pages. So 9 millimeters. I could eyeball this, but let's do it. Just cut a little teeny sliver with my X-Acto knife. And let's see, and then move it over a teeny bit. Cut another sliver. That wasn't enough. Okay, I'm gonna just do this freehand. Cut a little sliver, cut the top, and this is so small, I could just pick it up with my knife, but I'll pick it up with my fingers. Okay, so we have a teeny little sliver. Now we're gonna go back to the tracker and make sure that's gonna fit right. Use my knife to assist me. Oh, that looks good. Then I get out my handy glue stick, and I like Yoo-Hoo brand, but whatever. And with some knife assisting, going to get a little glue on there. This is a brand new one, so it's a little bit solid. And then again, using my knife to assist me, I'm just going to place it down where it goes. And using skills of a surgeon here, we place the donor graft material onto the wound, position it exactly, well, more or less. I could probably use a little glue, more glue, and I could even like trim this teeny tiny bit once it dries that is overlapping a bit. And there you have a relatively seamless fix for a stray line. It would, in all honesty, be slightly more seamless had I not done this before to see if it worked and then peeled it off and done it again to film it. So your results might be better than this. And like I said, like once it dries, I could trim off that teeny little, millimeter of extra there. And there you go, skin graft technique. Practice your surgical skills in your moleskin with mole skin. Okay. So the next idea I have And it's called Mole Out. Out pen that doesn't match thing. And I was Googling around and reading stuff online, and I found a forum on a message board on Flickr from 2009, I think, by a person named Plannerism's Laura, who said that she got this idea from her sister. I'll link to the post below. It's really short and old, but for what it's worth, this idea is from Laura and her sister. Laurie, I'm sorry. And so they decided to solve the whiteout not matching problem by taking some whiteout. In this case, we have the Bic whiteout and in white, and the Bic whiteout in buff, and mixing them. I was like, why didn't I think of that? So the method that she suggested and that I would second is to take your whiteout and slowly add buff to it and keep testing it and letting it dry in your moleskin until you find a color that exactly matches. And from my experience, it is way more white than buff, so do add the buff to the white drop by drop and see what happens. I actually mixed it for this experiment in this paint mixing bowl I had handy, just so I could sort of see what it looked like, because you can't see much down in there. And so this is, you probably can't differentiate this from white very much, but this pot here has the color I came up with, and it looks pretty white, and it's starting to dry out, which is a thing with working with whiteout. It dries really fast because it's quick dry. So let me just get this off of the brush a bit. And did you know whiteout brushes aren't brushes anymore? They are kind of these foamy applicator things. Interesting. I haven't used whiteout since the 80s. So, oh, it's getting quite tacky. Look at that. Did you know whiteout forms the pudding skin if you leave it sitting there for a while? That's kind of gross. So, anyway, it's liquid underneath. So I made up this mixture, and I found that dabbing it quite lightly and letting it dry and then going in for a second coat was the most efficient way to keep it from being globby, because you don't want globby whiteout. So just testing it on these different lines here, which I'll talk about in a sec. So that's coat one. And meanwhile, while that dries, so this is Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen in Fine, which I know is a favorite. This is a Prismacolor, oh wait, there's that guy. Oh, Pitt Artist Pen in Fine in black. Then the next one is Prismacolor Premier in the 03 width. I used to love these for drawing, but I'm not so great for writing. The tip's kind of funny. Next is a cheap black ballpoint. In this case, we have one from the excellent Independent Film Festival of Boston, and I highly recommend, though this pen is, you know, nothing to write home about. Their t-shirts are good though. And this bottom one is my Fancy Pants Mont Blanc fountain pen with a fairly broad tip, though. I think it says, I don't know what it says. It has ink on it. But it's, you know, it's not great for bullet journal. It's pretty, it absorbs a bit. And it's just using standard Fancy Pants Mont Blanc ink that is liquid. So yeah, that's these guys, and these are kind of drying, so I'll add another layer maybe. Oh, they're not dry enough. But you can see that this color blends a lot better with the moleskin than your standard whiteout or your standard buff, which is like really too creamy and ivory-y. If this weren't so tacky because I'd left it out, it would not be doing that kind of gross thing where it's like, where it pulls. But you get the idea, whiteout. So yes, I'm sure the other brands are the same and they probably come in buff too, but these were readily available at my local office supply store. Bic whiteout, quick dry correction fluid in white and in buff. Fun. So also the other thing is if you add the buff to the white in the jar, then you have a jar of moleskin colored whiteout on hand that you can put the cap back on and close, and yeah, that's handy. And it's mole out. Yes, mole out. I think that's a really great name. And praise to the sisters of 2009 Flickr who came up with it. So there's a little edit there, and you may or may not have noticed. But while I was gone, I made a huge mess of this page. Just don't even look at that. I was suddenly inspired to experiment on camera with some things that were not such a brilliant idea. Anyway, the last technique that I wanted to show you that works reasonably well is actually using sandpaper. And I've had the most success using extremely fine grit sandpaper like this, which is probably 150. It's really smooth. This piece I have here happens to be really dirty, and so I was using it to polish jewelry. So if I use it in my notebook, it's gonna just make a huge mess, and I don't have any more at the moment. This is probably a little bit grittier, maybe like a 300, I don't know. And then I have this very gritty sandpaper that's, I don't know, it's more like a woodworking kind. It's gritty. And so that's what I'm going to use because it's what I have that's clean right now. I would suggest going with something finer, like the piece I just threw on the floor, or this piece. So the technique is just to rub really, really gently, or sand as it were. Sanding my notebook. And this doesn't really, I mean, it takes the ink off, but it really is taking a layer of paper off as well. But the idea is to keep it like a micro layer, like you're just, what's that thing when you do your facial and you just take off one layer? Oh God, I have word loss. I'll remember. But, so you can see the top of the exclamation point's going away, and it's starting to go away, and it would if I kept going, and to be careful not to rip through the paper. I've actually done this quite successfully for just like one letter at the end of a word that I needed to wipe off, and it went away pretty much, and I was actually able to write over it again and correct it reasonably seamlessly. Like, it looked better than a cross out for what I was doing. Sanding my moleskin. See? It's kind of gone. And so, like, say I wanted to make this a question mark instead or something. You know, it works. You can kind of see the grit. I might want to clean it up a little with just a regular eraser if I got smudgy. So sandpaper works pretty well. By the same token, you could also use a blade to scrape at the paper. You have to be really careful not to rip it, and don't use the point. Use the blade part. So this might be something you've done if you had any unfortunate jobs in like drafting or maybe graphic design in the dark ages, but kind of works. You know, I wouldn't do it on something super important, but just say there is a bit that bugged me, I could fix it. Oops. I don't know. So that's the blade. Have fun. Leave your mistakes if you want. They're fine. Or cover them up. All right. Thanks. Bye.